Hey, everybody, and welcome back to The Beard and the Bald. I am Paul Shirey, the Beard, joined by my compatriot, the Bald, Christopher Bumbray.
The Bald, but I also have a beard, so.
But you're still the Bald. And what's funny is I'm gonna lead into this here in a second, but I interviewed Dave Porter, the composer that's done all the Breaking Bad and the Better Call Saul stuff, and it's for the show, and that's what how I got it. And when I got on, he's like, you must be the Beard. And I was like, yeah, the Bald will not be joining us. But it was pretty funny. So I'm gonna sidestep everything before we get into the big stuff. So the big stuff we're gonna be talking about today is CinemaCon, Top Gun Maverick, and then I've got some shows that I've watched that I'll catch you guys up on. We'll talk a little bit about the Northman as well. But before we get into any of that, I'm going to lead you guys right into my interview with Dave Porter. So just to give you a quick background on Dave, he is a composer that has worked at he's worked on film and other stuff too, but he's done all the music for every episode of Breaking Bad, every episode of Better Call Saul, and also El Camino. So he's done every Gilligan-verse Breaking Bad.
Yeah, it has that distinct sound too.
Yeah. And we talk a little bit about, doing the opening theme for Breaking Bad and how it's kind of become this iconic, like you hear it, you immediately know, oh, that's Breaking Bad, right? Like not many composers, or not all composers rather, can say like, oh, I have a theme that is like instantly recognized. So if you're interested in, that, and, I did try and pull a little bit of spoiler-ish type stuff out or some scoopish type stuff, but Dave did not budge. He was very good, but he does offer some really good and interesting things about the show. So I'm going to leave you guys with that, and you can enjoy that interview. I think it's about 15 minutes long, and then you can just jump forward if you don't want to listen, and we're going to start talking CinemaCon. So for now, here is Dave Porter talking about Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Dave, you started out as studying classical music, kind of those early roots, and then you developed an interest in like electronic music. I'm curious about that evolution, and then some of the influences that led you down that path. Like, what was it that you were like, this is a direction I want to go?
Yeah, I think that there's a combination of things, of course, but I grew up with my folks who were very, especially my father, very into classical music and nothing but. Yeah. So as a kid, that was my world of music, not only in the house, but what I played, starting young as a pianist. My parents are both very musical. They're not professional musicians, but music was a big part of our family. And it wasn't sort of until, I got older and there were teenage kids in the neighborhood that I knew, who were out there listening to the music of the day, that I got exposed to those things. And it kind of blew my mind, because it all kind of happened very quickly.
Yeah.
And I was, I'm a child of the 80s, and, there was a lot going on, not only with, the changing landscape of music, but also the changing technology behind making music.
Yeah.
Which I was instantly drawn into because I had these keyboard skills already. But I think, I'd spent so much time as a young person playing, to put it in a dark light, regurgitating Mozart, right, and Bach, and playing a lot of music that had been around a long time, that it never really occurred to me to create music. And I loved music, but I just sort of assumed that a canon of music existed, and right. and it was only for very special people to be out there to make music. And it took the technology, I think, and particularly like the advent of synthesizers. Early in my teenage years to find that avenue of exploration that combined kind of my interest in music, but also the technology. And so originally, all my music that I made was purely electronic. It was the only thing that interested me in making music. And then as I got a little older and I got to college and beyond, and is when I sort of saw the benefits of all that classical training, right, and started to marry the two. And I think, if you look at, what people are doing in film scores, these days. It is that. It is this hybrid, pretty much in every instance now of both technology and very current and modern ways of making music, combined with orchestral and rules about music that have been around a really long time. And so to me, it was kind of a very natural fit.
So for the influences that hit you, like you mentioned, kind of that 80s era, would you say things like John Carpenter and like Tangerine Dream and Vangelis, things like that? Or was there other stuff out there too that that hit you and led to where you ended up?
It was all of it, honestly. I mean, I think, my dad was in addition to being a big classical music guy, was also a big audiophile. So we built in our basement to, a very early surround sound system to watch movies on before you could really do that. We're doing it off VHS, back long before there was any surround sound to be had, and we love that stuff. And I was always, I think, very cognizant of the power of music and TV and film through that. And then not just the electronic folks like you mentioned, like Tangerine Dream and all that, but just the great scores of that era. I mean, the original Aliens movie and all these things, and then ultimately, even some glimpses of the ability to bring that power of music and film to TV in things like Twin Peaks. Right. Miami Vice. Right. I mean, those shows that put music forward in a way that, hadn't been done on TV. It was purely the realm of film. And I think all of that was absolutely exciting to me.
So you mentioned Miami Vice, and that immediately, when you say Miami Vice, like that evokes the opening theme immediately. And now if you were to say Breaking Bad, your theme would pop immediately. Like, it has become this renowned thing that you could play the Breaking Bad theme and people would be like, that's Breaking Bad. What has that been like for you? I'm sure that, that's something that constantly gets brought up, but I mean, ultimately you've added to that huge, library of opening themes that are unforgettable. What has that been like for you?
I mean, it's hard to explain, in all honesty. I mean, I've never thought about, I guess the importance of that, and you can't even know when you're doing it, what that could possibly turn into. So I think, but to take a step back from that, one of the things that I do love about working in TV, which you don't get to do in film per se, is that opening title piece of music, right? And some of my proudest things that I've done are the Breaking Bad one. My opening theme for a show that I did for AMC called Preacher is one of my favorite things I've done. And it's a very difficult challenge, of course. I mean, if you think about it, but to try to encapsulate, an entire show or entire vibe, an entire world that you're creating in 20 seconds, 30 seconds it's tough. And it's a fun challenge. It's an interesting challenge. The Breaking Bad one is particularly, amazing to me and how it all worked out, in that I knew so little. And I think even Vince Gilligan would say he knew so little about where things were going to go and what
so early.
Like, it was so early. And they were just trying to get this thing off the ground. But, he's, being the very wise gentleman that he is, we talked about really the whole scope of what it could be. And in a really simple way, that story of this milquetoast guy who becomes much more than that, and a much more big and grand and epic and larger world that was going to grow around him. And for me, I think the Breaking Bad theme is particularly in those early years, was that reminder, or not even a reminder because nobody knew, but I guess the right word would be that a little sage glimpse, right, into the future of where this show is going to be. Because he certainly isn't that, particularly when the show begins, that first season. He's still that very milquetoast. There's really nothing to back up the power and the scope of that opening theme, other than to say that it's a little pointer to where the show is headed. And I think that that's always what it was. And, in terms of being being so fortunate as to have a piece of music be in the pantheon of those great TV shows, obviously that has way more to do with the fact that it's a great TV show.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it does with me. But and my fortune to be a small part of it. But I appreciate the sentiment. Yeah,
absolutely. So how did Breaking Bad come to you? I mean, how did you and Breaking Bad get married up? What was that like? And then what was it like working with Vince to kind of develop the sound throughout the show as it grew?
Yeah. So, like all things, I think that work out like this, it's a combination of some good luck and good fortune, and then working your tail off. And
frequently the case, luck and talent. I know how they get married together.
And hard work too. A lot of time invested. I happen to know, and having had worked with them on prior projects, both the music editor and the music supervisor, Thomas Golovich, who's been with us this whole run. Who from other projects, I already knew them, and they had an opportunity to interview before I did for the pilot, and they had seen the pilot. In fact, I got to first time I saw the pilot was at Thomas Golovich's house while he was preparing for his interview with Vince, and he said, "Yeah, I just want to get your opinion on this show. It looks amazing. It felt so filmic and so beyond the scope of what was on TV, particularly then." And boy, as soon as I saw it, I said, wow, I gotta get my hooks in this too. It's just so clearly above and beyond. So yeah, having some insider folks there who were hired before I was very helpful. And I think, music wise, in terms of where the pilot was heading at the time, I think Vince would be the first to say that he was very confident in every aspect about it, except maybe the music.
Yeah.
Which was not something he had maybe done a lot of in his prior experience. And it was tough. It's just tough. Music is a tough thing to talk about. And you find that a lot of producers and directors are more, visually driven, of course, because it's what they're dealing with all the time. So I managed to get a few pieces of mine into some early versions of the pilot as it was being put together that went over well. And you have to remember, this is a different era and a different time. AMC was a very brand new channel.
Yeah.
Mad Men had just come on the air, but even it hadn't made a big ripple yet. And other than that, it was a place where you went to watch old movies.
Yeah.
And it was not really on the radar,
So true.
particularly for new programming material.
Yeah.
So, just my fortune to be there right time. And obviously I was relentless in my pursuit of it. But when the time came, people were happy with the music they had been listening. And, thankfully, when I interviewed there, everybody seemed to like what I had to say about things we could do for the show. And the rest is history.
When you watched the pilot initially, did it have temp music already in there, or was it just a blank slate?
It did. No, it did. It had a whole mishmash of things literally out of Vince's iPod, I think.
What were the influences that he had in there? Do you remember any of the stuff that was in there before?
I don't.
Anything recognizable?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of stuff that just was stuff that he listened to, and I don't know. It's been a long time. I'm sorry. I don't.
Oh no, that's just like the natural question. I'm like, what did Vince use at that time? Because your music is just synonymous with the Breaking Bad world, because it's not just Breaking Bad, it's also El Camino, it's Better Call Saul. So, it's so wrapped up in that. So it's almost like this, it's like one of those things like who was almost cast in a movie. It's like, what was Vince even thinking at that time in terms of music? I guess that's a Vince question in that sense, but it's definitely
maybe so. And to be honest, I was not to say that he didn't think about it. I think it was important. But I think in the process of trying to sell a pilot, right? I think maybe, and I've certainly seen this in other instances, the music is not always foremost in anybody's mind, including the network. I mean, because they know that has to come in time, and some of that has to just go and get figured out as you go.
Yeah.
I think one of the lessons that I learned from watching the pilot, though, was that I think because it was a kind of a crazy mishmash of stuff, some orchestral, some current, some pop, some this, that, guitar, this all kinds of stuff, that the show really needed a universe in terms of its an aural universe, right? A sound universe that was its own. And the show clearly could carry it. Yeah. Right. It was not a period piece per se. It was current. And that's kind of where, when I was in my interview with them, why I pitched, hey, we've got this interesting science element to the show, and this show feels right out of the box like something different and special. And how do we make it stand out from what's out in the television world at that time? Yeah. And to me, the idea of blending kind of a whole universe of sounds that were anything but the typical orchestral palette, it's taking that off the table entirely, but still, hopefully, and I hope I strive for this in all of my music in the Breaking Bad universe, is to use all that technology and all those found sounds and all those ethnic instruments in a way that is still organic. Yeah. Right? It doesn't feel computery. Yeah. It feels like it's got tension and human drive behind it. And that was the idea, and that's really what it is. I mean, it's obviously evolved along the way an awful lot in different directions, but that was the initial idea.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of my questions was going to be, because I'm always fascinated by this, like, you hear about all, musicians typically, they're pulling from all different places to create the world, to create the environment, to create the mood. So I'm curious, what are some of the craziest things you've used as like samples throughout your score for Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul or anything? What are some of the craziest things you've pulled in and worked into the music throughout?
There are really no rules for it. One of the I love that. Yeah, I mean, my only rule was no orchestral, and even that I've bent a few times by using some solo orchestral instruments, but then processing them in a bizarre way. For example, like there's in the standoff scene, the sort of Old West standoff scene in El Camino, when they're all fingering their guns, ready for the shootout, is actually all cello, but you wouldn't necessarily know that because I ran it through a Marshall amp and did kinds of all crazy things to it afterwards. So, the beauty of the technology, and one of the ways that I've found very powerful to make technologically derived sounds feel organic, is to start out organic, but then, mutate them enough, right, that they're maybe not recognizable for what you think they are, but they still give you a sense that they were played by a human, and that can obviously be emotive just in and of itself. Yeah. So there's a lot of examples like that. I think of there's you can see it over there. No, can't see it. In the back corner, there's a Japanese koto, which is a very long stringed instrument that I brought home from some earlier studies that I did in Japan when I was younger. Which is a very, very delicate instrument. You play with your fingers, or little plectrums attached to your fingers. And likewise, there's a motif. There are not a lot of recurring motifs in any of these shows by design, but there are a few. And one of them in Breaking Bad, when he dons his Heisenberg hat, there's a little 5-note theme that is played on that instrument. But again, something delicate made very powerful through the way I processed it later.
That's awesome. So you were impressed by the pilot initially, and I'm assuming, like most people, you probably became a fan over time of the show as you're creating it. So I'm curious, what was it like knowing, kind of the things that are happening in the show, long before it debuts, because you're scoring it. And I'm curious, did people like in your circle, did they hound you for spoilers during that time? Were they like, dude, just tell me what happens, Dave? Come on, tell me. Was that something you encountered throughout your time or still encounter? I mean, with Better Call Saul now out, not quite.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. To be honest, it's usually folks in the press.
Guys like me, okay.
Guys like you.
Come on, tell us what happened.
Get me to slip up because I'm not as media savvy as Vince and Peter or some of the other folks who are interviewed more often. Honest, I think people know. First of all, people who know me know how much I respect the story and the treasures in it. For myself, I'm very blessed to be last in the process. So when I watch the show, other than the music and some sound work, it's done.
Yeah.
So I get to watch it like a fan. Nice. And I purposely steer away from the scripts unless there's some particular reason why I need to read them, because I love to watch it like a fan. And it helps me creatively to watch it like a fan, because then I can objectively watch and say, gosh, that was amazing, or this was great. I wish this and this tied together, or here's a moment where this could be even more tense, or this could be, all those creative decisions get made before me, how it's written, acted, shot, edited, all those things play into, the decisions that I make that are hopefully complementary to those decisions, and to make the show the best that I can. I wish there was no marketing. I wish there was no trailers. I wish there was no any of those things, because I try to avoid them personally in anything that I'm interested in watching. I even try to, I love recommendations from people to watch something new that I haven't had time when the rare opportunities that I have time to watch something. But as soon as they start to tell me what it's about, it's like, no, it's enough for you to just tell me it was good.
Yeah.
I don't want to know more. I really don't. And I understand not everyone's that way, but for me personally, there's so few joyous surprises left in life.
Yeah.
The more that I can say. And I certainly, and honestly, that's something we think about too, even in the scoring of the show. We try to be very cognizant of what the audience knows and what the audience doesn't know. And we talk about that a lot, so that we don't ever make a mistake, hopefully, where the music, for example, forecasts something.
Yeah.
That we wouldn't want to.
It's always felt organic in that way. From Breaking Bad to El Camino and Better Call Saul, it's always felt organic. I've never felt like I was being manipulated by the music. I always felt like it fit right within. Does that, and I guess that lines up with your intentions, because I never felt like I was like, okay, they're letting me know that I need to feel this way, or I need to anticipate something. I always felt like, oh shit. Like I just felt the intensity. I never felt like, and I think that's one of the greatest things about the show. And I think that's where your music also complements the drama, is that you feel that intensity in those moments. You're not expecting something. You're not expecting something specific. You're just expecting something. You're just like, oh man, it's coming.
I'm always glad to hear that. And I appreciate that. And certainly we spend an awful lot of time working towards that goal. And I think, that, and again, I mean, this all comes from the show being what it is, and not every show has the complexity and the layers and the smarts, frankly, to have music be able to simply play that role.
Yeah,
right? Because there are all those layers and all that intricacy and that absolutely everything you see matters for some reason or another, right? We really want everyone to have their own personal reactions, to view everything through their own personal lens, so that when you see all of these characters, all of whom are a big hot mess, right? Yeah. They're all amazing and worth rooting for, and also absolutely despicable, just like every human being, right? Like all of us.
I love it.
We don't want to tell you how to feel about any of that.
Yeah.
And the example, the biggest and the most obvious example, which I use all the time, is Bryan Cranston's character, Walter White, in Breaking Bad. There are some people who despised him by the end of the first season. And we're just like, I'm compelled by this character, but I loathe him. And I loathe everything he's doing and everything he stands for. And there are others who rooted to him for everything he did, no matter how horrendous, to the very, very bitter end.
Yeah.
And that is fantastic from my perspective, because
he's such a complex character.
Yeah. And that's how it should be. We should all have the ability to have our own viewpoint and our own reaction to how a piece of art in this case makes us feel.
So building off of that, from Breaking Bad, you're moving into Better Call Saul. It's wrapping up its final season. And it's a different show, but it's, still absolutely within the Breaking Bad wheelhouse. It still has that kind of, anxiety and intensity and this kind of propulsive, weird, vibe to it.
Especially now, I'd say, yeah.
Yeah. What did Vince ask of you for this? Did he say, hey, just do Breaking Bad, or did he have anything specific that he wanted you to do for Better Call Saul?
Interestingly, the best gift that Peter and Vince gave me when we were starting Better Call Saul, and this is some years ago now, was to absolutely start fresh, which surprised me, to be honest, as you might imagine, because there are plenty of characters that are we already know coming in. It's not that far removed, it's still Albuquerque, it's still all these things that are the same. And not for nothing, Breaking Bad was pretty successful. So would you go and throw it all away and start from fresh? That's what they wanted, and it took me a minute. It really did, to like recalibrate and just totally come out of nowhere. But it's the best gift they could have given me, because it gave me this entirely new world, musically speaking. Still no big orchestral instruments, but a whole different palette that I kind of refer to as like my 70s rock palette.
Oh, okay.
Like drums, bass, farfisa organs, and whirlies, and that kind of harken back to those early years of Better Call Saul, to learning about Jimmy.
Yeah,
right? We didn't know, right? Early Jimmy, right, and slipping Jimmy, right, as he becomes who he becomes, and then why it worked out so well, which I never could have imagined, because I obviously don't know what those guys knew. But as we could slowly introduce little tidbits and more characters from the Breaking Bad world, right? First Mike, right? Then the cousins, a little of this, a little of that. I was coming from a whole fresh place, and that Breaking Bad style of score felt fresh again.
Yeah.
And it felt new, and it had the impact of bringing us psychologically right back.
Yeah.
And that has happened in drips and drabs as we've gone through the seasons. And now here we are, of course, Breaking Bad being a prequel, closing in on the beginning of the world as we started it in Breaking Bad. I'm able to really bring in a lot of the big meaty intensity that we had in Breaking Bad here now into Better Call Saul, which has been super fun. And it feels fresh now because we've been able to introduce it slowly.
So it's already been revealed. Everybody knows that, that Cranston and Aaron Paul are coming back in some capacity. What was it like for you as a composer to revisit that? I mean, like pulling their themes together and all that. What was that like for you to say, okay, these guys are back? Is that something where you're like, I'm going to pull those same themes? Cause you're talking about that a little bit just now, or was there something new that you added to the Breaking Bad mythos in that way?
It's tricky because I can't talk about too much of that.
Right. I know you can't say specific things, but yeah, of course.
But I will actually say that it didn't inform as much of what I need to do as I thought it might. I think because the story it feels very natural. These guys are amazing, guys and gals who are writing this thing, they're just amazing. Yeah. And it won't. I think it will not feel like and Peter said this, so I can say this. I don't think their appearance is even one of the larger events.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what he had said.
It just feels very naturally occurring in that sense. And the story has been building there for, like I said, for so long now, that it just kind of, we just kind of get there.
Yeah.
You know, and there's so much to tell here in the stories of Jimmy, Saul, Gene, not to mention Nacho, not to mention Kim, you know, all of whom are incredible characters too. That, you know, the way that, you know, I can't say much, but it just all comes, it's all very satisfying in that way that these folks are so good at.
So building on that, Peter Gould just recently said that once Better Call Saul is done, once everybody has seen the full season, he said that fans will see Breaking Bad in a whole new light. Did you feel that on a musical front? And how did completing the whole chapter of shows like Breaking Bad, El Camino, Better Call Saul, how did that feel to you as a body of work? Did it feel like you completed something, and did anything change? Did your perspective change on Breaking Bad as far as everything wrapping up?
This is a fantastic question that I'm not sure I can wrap my head around yet, to be fair. I'm still working on the final season, so there's still some ways to go, and I'm very deep in it. And I think by design, I'm realizing that I've buried my head in it so deep that I can't be thinking about the end of it or the bigger picture of it. I'm so concerned about getting everything as right as I possibly can and not screwing the stuff up. That it's just I'm laser focused on it. In the back of my head, of course, there's this gnawing, like, fear and sadness and you know, definitely bittersweet feelings that we're coming to the end. I mean, it's been 15 years.
That's wild.
And especially in Hollywood, to work with the same core group of people, and it's a big core of people.
Yeah.
You know, on all of this stuff together every single year for 15 years is just unheard of. It just doesn't happen. And so it's literally everybody says this, but it is literally family. You know, my wife throws me a birthday party a few weeks ago. Nearly everybody there is people I work with on these shows, because they are my friends as well as my compatriots in work. So I haven't wrapped my head around it. I've been thinking lately that my son, who's just a little younger than yours, you know, maybe 5 years from now, when he's an established teenager and maybe ready to watch it, it's going to be a fascinating experience for me to go back.
Yeah, for sure.
Watch it all again. Obviously, you know, to prepare for things, I'm jumping back and forth to see old scenes an awful lot, but I certainly haven't sat and watched, you know, the entirety of Breaking Bad, for example, ever, honestly.
Oh, wow. Since
I finished it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. It's a very, very complex question. I will undoubtedly, because I'm, you know, and this would be true of, I think, everybody who works on it and every composer I know, I will be self-critical of a lot of things when I go back. And especially because, you know, I'm a much better composer today than I was 15 years ago. I couldn't not be.
Yeah, of course.
So, you know, there's, I wish I had learned that lesson earlier. I wish I'd seen this. But overall, of course, I'm going to be and will always be immensely proud. And I told Vince once recently, all I'm doing is making sure I don't get hit by a bus in the next couple of months. So I make sure I get to work on every single episode. Start to finish.
Stay in the house. Like, I'm not leaving.
I'm not risking anything. I gotta get through.
That's awesome. Dave, thank you so much for your time. This has been great. I
really appreciate it.
It's, you know, you're definitely part of a legacy here. And I just think it's, you know, it's an amazing body of work. Just like you, my son is almost to that age. I can't wait to sit down with him. Like, and he's into like Breaking Bad memes now. Like, there's all kinds of memes, and I'll ask him, like, how is this even funny? You know, it's like, I don't even get the memes, but he's already getting into it. And I can't wait to watch the show. So,
I'm excited for you and for everyone.
I watched the show. I got early on. I started watching it, and I remember we went full tilt. We watched like everything, and then we got up to the last season of Breaking Bad, and we had to watch it instead of binging it. We had to wait, and I remember that killed us. It was like, oh my God,
yeah.
You know? But I love that. I love the wait. I actually love the wait now because it's like. With your music, with everything, with it keeps that intensity, that anxiety where you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I can handle what's coming. It's like so much.
Yeah. I always recommend people try to not binge.
yeah.
Honestly, because especially Breaking Bad, when we were doing it, binging wasn't even a thing. Nobody that was just wasn't done. And so, there is a beauty. I mean, we certainly design these shows for people to take stock of them when they're done. Take a breath. Think, God, what did I just see? And what did all that mean? Right. Before you immediately launch into the next one. But I'm with you. I'm excited I'm excited for everyone. And gosh, I mean, everybody did such an amazing job in this final season. I'm very confident that people will be talking about it for a while.
Beautiful. Thanks again so much. I appreciate it. Also, recommendation for you. Tokyo Vice on HBO Max.
Oh, you don't have to recommend it. I'm already all over it.
Oh, great. Okay, good.
Love it.
I'm trying to tell everybody just to watch it because it's so good.
Yeah, super great.
I just screened the last episodes. I'll give you no spoilers, but it's amazing. It's so amazing. And there better be a season 2 or I'll be upset. Take care, Dave. Thank you so much, man.
Cheers.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so that was Dave. You could check out obviously his work if you're still watching Breaking Bad. This is the final season. Chris, Better Call Saul. You are a big Better Call Saul fan. Right?
I am. Yeah, I'm one episode behind because I was in Vegas, so I missed last week's episode. But I've got it DVR'd, so I will be watching it shortly.
So you don't know what happens. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I mean, it's all going to lead into Saul Goodman basically, working at the Cinnabon, right? And his as
Gene, right? Like Gene is his name.
Yeah.
In that.
Yeah. So I think you're going to see like his descent into Saul Goodman, but then I think they're going to start doing more with the jump aheads as well. Yeah. So I would imagine like there'll be more stuff going on there too. My big question though is like whether or not Kim is going to survive, and some of those things.
I feel like, and I don't know, to be clear, I don't know anything. It's all speculation. I feel like there's got to be some kind of tragedy that's going to befall him.
It's possible.
And I think that a lot of that is going to rest on the Kim character. So
I think we're going to see Walt and Jesse though, because I know they are coming back. I think we're going to see Walt in that year that he was on the run between when he left and the finale. So I think that's when he's going to run across Saul, because we don't really know if that takes place after Walt dies or not. So I think there'll be something to do with that. And I'd be curious though, because I really do like that show, but it's gotten steadily darker as it's gone on.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because Odenkirk's already signed on to another show, but I mean, it sounds like
for him, very different show. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they want to keep him in the family, and I think he wants to do something lighter. I'm reading his biography now, actually.
Odenkirk's?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know he had
good. I read Mel Brooks's biography on the plane.
Oh, cool. How was that?
It was funny. Yeah, it was very Mel Brooks. Very likable.
Does he talk about Spaceballs, making of Spaceballs? I just watched that.
Yeah. He talks all about Spaceballs, but the best part is when he talks about making solar babies. And it's for real. And his Brooks film stuff is really interesting too, because for those people that don't know, Mel Brooks, for a while in the 80s, he formed a company called Brooks Films because he wanted to branch out beyond comedy, but he had a feeling that if people saw his name on things, they would think that all he could do was comedy. So he produced a bunch of movies, but he was a very hands-on producer, and it was stuff that was not in his wheelhouse. So he did The Elephant Man with David Lynch, arguably discovered him, and he did The Fly with David Cronenberg, and they were both huge hits. And he talks all about making them and about working with those guys and in the Mel Brooks style. And he really liked it. And he was like, and it's weird because he talks about going to see Videodrome, and you wouldn't think of like Mel Brooks going to see Videodrome. He said,
I can't imagine Mel Brooks watching The Fly.
Loved it. He said he thought The Fly was terrific. He said,
it is terrific. It's a fucking classic.
Where do you read his book, though? He's got wider taste than you'd think. And his son is Max Brooks, who did World War Z. So I think I read
World War Z. I know.
I think it sounds like Brooks is just a movie fan and will watch all kinds of stuff. Is good at making a certain type of thing and acknowledges that, but has an interest in a lot of different genres. That's why he makes spoofs, and he likes all kinds of movies. It's Solar Babies, though. He said that it was supposed to be filmed, and there's a great interview on how did this get made where like the researcher called him and he's like, I'm very busy, I can't really talk. But then he ended up talking for like an hour because he's like that kind of old grandpa thing. I'll tell you one more story, Blake. But anyway, he talks, but he talks about Solar Babies. It's supposed to be $5 million shot in Spain. He put his own money into it because he thought that, I'll make a mint, because all of his movies were really successful. Like he made a ton of money on The Fly, and he actually made a lot of money on The Elephant Man. And he said that $5 million, 20 minutes of the movie had been shot. He had to keep sinking money. He got into $18 million of his own money. And he said that he was saved because the guy Alan Ladd Jr. who ran MGM got like an international conglomerate to like buy the film from him. And he said he didn't get back a lot of his money, but he said he was able to get back like enough that he wasn't going to lose his house or something. Because he said he was in trouble. But he said that the funniest thing is, he said that 30 years after the fact, Solar Babies actually broke even and he made money on it.
That was what I was going to ask. Like, was Solar Babies actually a complete failure? I don't think it was.
He said it was a huge flop in theaters, like a disaster. It only made like $3 million. But then he said after it hit home video and cable and it became kind of a cult hit, he said he eventually made money on it. Yeah. Which he said he thought would never, ever happen. But it scared him away from producing, though. And he stopped making like Brooks movies after that. But he had very different tastes. Like he did a horror movie too. He liked horror. He always had a thing for horror. Like he had an affinity for the genre. That's why he did Young Frankenstein and Dracula Dead and Loving It. But he liked all kinds of stuff too. And there's a really
never think that for Mel,
if you get the DVD or the Blu-ray of The Fly, there's an amazing documentary that's like 2 hours long, and Brooks is interviewed extensively, and it goes all the way through like the first drafts of the script and stuff like that, and his reaction to the movie and the score, and he talks all about, and he loves, like he really does love that movie. He thinks it's amazing. Nice. And he said that, he takes no responsibility for it. He said that it was
very Cronenberg. Yeah.
Cronenberg. He takes a little more for The Elephant Man, but he had he said that he was very proud to have helped him. And he said he watches his movies, and I think he's got a pretty wide, I think his tastes run much wider than you'd think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I am reading Tokyo Vice because I decided to.
There's been some controversy about that, though, where a lot of people are saying that some of the stuff he describes never really happened.
I don't know why there's controversy, because it's plainly and flatly said from the executive producers that this is not a direct adaptation. This is
no. The book was apparently not so much the show. I don't think people are surprised about the show. It's the book that is getting controversial.
I haven't seen.
He's gone on and said that it was all real. And there were people that are kind of like, anyway, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting book, though. I mean, it's a fascinating.
I feel like people have been out to get that show, though, from the beginning.
I think it all ties to Ansel Elgort, though.
Yeah, like the knives are out for that show.
I mean, it feels like very like, I don't even really know the specifics of the case. If it's not even a case, it's just It's one of those things where it's like the Aziz Ansari thing, where you had a bad date, and it's just kind of like.
Oh, and speaking of poor Aziz Ansari, one of the worst things, Variety, when they were reporting about, because what happened on Being Mortal, the movie's been shut down because of Bill Murray.
Yeah, something happened with him, but I didn't hear what.
Yeah, something happened with Bill Murray, and he did an interview yesterday about it, and he said it was a comment that he thought was funny, was taken out of hand, but anyway, like the movie may not get back up. But when that news broke and people didn't know it was Bill Murray, Variety basically did five paragraphs, and then the fifth paragraph revealed it wasn't Aziz Ansari. And it's like, considering his past, that should have been the lead, was not Aziz Ansari.
Yeah.
So, it's just the most clickbaity shit, and anyway, it's all gotten so out of hand, though.
It's really gotten out of hand. And you know, I mean, that even goes like hand in hand with like the Johnny Depp Amber Heard stuff.
I mean, you watch that trial. I mean, he's clearly no saint, but it also speaks to the danger of snap judgments, because very clearly she is lying quite a bit and rode that wave to.
I'm definitely, in terms of the case, I've definitely fallen on the side of Johnny Depp. I never really took a stance before, but I've literally sat and watched the trial because it's all televised.
I think he did a lot of what she said he did, but I also think that, you know, she's portraying herself and riding a wave as a victim that she's not necessarily.
I think she just completely fucked herself by writing that op-ed to begin with. She just never should have wrote it. And it was basically a paid deal. That she didn't even write, that she did not even write. And it was the ACLU that basically teamed up with her to publish this piece. They have the emails, it's in the court case, that it was explicitly to jump on the hype train for Aquaman. And I'm like, wow. Like so many
interesting thing
bad
about
things happen with that.
Is so Grace Randolph posted the other day, and I don't know how legit any of her shit is, and she might have just guessed this, but she said that she heard that Amber Heard only has about 10 minutes of screen time in Aquaman 2. Usually I saw that making the rounds too. Usually I would kind of ignore that, but that said, I was in CinemaCon and I saw some Aquaman 2 footage, and there's nary a shot of Amber Heard. So I would not be surprised. Yeah, I think they shot enough that if they want to include her for a certain amount of time, they could, but that they could also completely cut it out if they wanted to. That said, they showed a lot of Ezra Miller footage when I was there. Yeah, I guess that's what I was saying. I was like, I saw some reports coming from CinemaCon that were just like, yeah, they don't give a fuck about it. They don't care about anything. His name wasn't even mentioned though. But they really did. They did emphasize Michael Keaton as Batman, though, and I think that's what they were trying to get people excited about. And the footage was amazing because it does end with a reveal, and you get an idea of what his role is because you see him from the back, and he's got kind of like long gray hair, like he's become like a hermit, like almost like Howard Hughes. Yeah. And then he gets like a message from Barry, and then that gets him to shape up, and he opens up the Batcave, and then the next shot you see him, he's in the suit. But he hasn't got the cowl on, but his hair is cut and stuff. And then he says, well, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. It's pretty great. Did they show any more like Flash footage of the actual Flash? Yeah, they did. And they showed, we saw a lot of stuff. We saw the new Black Adam trailer that isn't out yet. That really emphasizes Dr. Fate. We saw, there were no major announcements. The only thing they announced that the Batman 2 was going to happen, but I don't think anyone was terribly surprised by that. They showed a sizzle reel for Aquaman 2 with some behind the scenes and some new stuff. Kind of like what they showed at DC Fandom. But the weirdest thing was that Olivia Wilde was served with custody papers in the middle of the presentation for Don't Worry, Darling, which is like... And that movie. So how did that happen? Did the person walk on stage and hand it? I spoke to somebody at CinemaCon afterwards at a party, and they told me that it was a delegate. So it was somebody that bought the badge, which cost like a couple $1,000s, and was probably paid off by the process server or was a process server and just placed it on stage and walked away. And we all thought it was an unsolicited script. And she goes, oh, what is this? A script? And then she looked at it and she goes, okay, got it. She didn't even acknowledge it. And it turned out afterwards. And they were very upset though. And it was a controversy because now people are going to be vetted a lot closer next year, I think. Yeah. But like, The Rock was there. He was fucking like schmoozing with the guys from the Midwest. Hey, Moogie, is that Moogie? Hey, Moogie. Like kind of that type of thing. Keanu Reeves showed up to present the John Wick 4 trailer, which looks amazing. John Wick with nunchucks. Yeah. And then Donnie Yen's sword fighting. It looks pretty wicked. Nice. But I was not impressed by the Expendables 4. It's expendable, and then with the A is a 4. Yeah, was not impressed with that at all. Looks very like generic, almost like VOD level. And I heard that there was only like 90%, 90% of the footage was from old films. It was. They showed a little bit though, and it looks like 50 Cent is the star. Who's the star? 50 Cent. Oh, because didn't he do a message to like? Yeah. He's like second build too in the trailer. I know, like what? Yeah. And Stallone's clearly being killed off. So there wasn't a heck of a lot to that, but
I feel like that could end the franchise, honestly.
Well, I think it's way cheaper. Anyway, and then there was I saw the first trailer for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning.
Part 1.
Which looks great.
The first horse chase ever in a Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's crazy. Like, it looks really wild, and there's like desert footage and stuff. I saw the Avatar, The Way of Water trailer.
Do you want to, are you severely depressed now that you've seen that because you don't live in Pandora?
No. I've never been a huge Avatar fan. I thought the thing that was interesting is they talked about re-releasing it in September.
Yeah,
and it's getting
September 23rd.
They want to get people back into, kind of in that universe, I guess.
I think it's smart. Like, honestly, I was talking to Maria, and she was like, why do I care about Avatar 2? And I was like, you don't. That's not a terrible point. Like, it came out in 2009. Mm-hmm. And I think there's been a huge gap. And while I think people may remember it fondly, it is the highest grossing movie of all time. It's a very easy movie to kind of be like, oh yeah. Like, I think re-releasing it, digitally remastered, new audio, I think it's going to draw people back in. And it's also can appeal to a new generation. And then they can go see it and be like, oh shit, in 3 months, the sequel comes out. Yeah. So I think
and then there's going to be a lot more coming every year afterwards. God, hopefully the first one doesn't flop. But I wasn't blown away by the trailer. I could see why it's a theatrical only thing, because I feel like if you saw it on your computer or your phone, it would not look impressive at all. Yeah. But then in high frame rate with 3D, it looked pretty good. Yeah, that said, I hate high frame rate, though. I'm not a fan of it at all. Yeah. And it's just, I just find it off-putting when I watch it. And I found the same way about this one.
I found it interesting when they released it with the Hobbit movies. And it's not that I loved the high frame rate. It was that it was so different. And then there were certain sequences where it just looked amazing. And then other sequences where it's like, it felt like you were on a stage play. But I just found it fascinating overall. I found the frame rate fascinating. It wasn't really a love or hate thing. It was just like, to me, it was just like, wow, this is so odd and strange.
I think it'll look good better in Avatar than a lot of other things, because it's not really live action.
Digital. Yeah.
Yeah. But, I don't know. We'll see. I'm unsure about that. I saw the first 15 minutes of Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness. I see the rest of it tomorrow night.
Apparently today there's like shit ton of leaks going out. So
yeah, I saw. Let's not address that though.
No, I don't want to talk. I don't know.
That's kind of a bummer though, because
I don't know any of them. So don't even tell me. I know nothing. I'm going to do my best to remain clear until I see.
I mean, it looks like they're probably pretty accurate. So if you want to have it spoiled, but then when I saw it, the first 15 minutes, there were no big reveals. But
and it just started with them fighting off the Gargantuan, whatever they renamed him to.
And I saw the first half hour of Lightyear, which
I heard that was very sci-fi-ish, more sci-fi than
nothing for me. And I like the premise should have been cooler, because they were like, Andy's favorite toy is Buzz Lightyear. Buzz Lightyear toys from his favorite movie, and this is that movie. If they'd done it like 1995 style, that would have been really cool. But it's not. It's just like they kind of. So it didn't really do much for me, to be honest. And Chris Pratt seems kind of on the nose. I kind of think they should have gone with Tim Allen, but anyway.
You mean Chris Evans?
Chris Evans. Sorry, I got them all confused.
Get your Chris's right, Chris.
I feel like they just went down the list when they were casting it, cross one off.
I think his voice sounds good for for that kind of movie version of a Buzz Lightyear. I think
it's very standard and it's very predictable. But anyway, the thing that I saw though that was big was I saw Top Gun Maverick.
What?
Finally. After a year that I saw the first 15 minutes in August, I finally saw a full movie. Was not disappointed. Cannot say much more than that.
What do you mean? Didn't they let you guys review it and stuff?
Nope. We were allowed to post social reactions, and I did a reaction video, but you're not allowed giving a full review. Like, I did a reaction video. And to me, I'll say this. It felt very much in the mode of the original Top Gun, which I liked. It wasn't really necessarily an action movie. It was more of a drama. It's more of a drama than we've gotten from Tom Cruise in a long time. There is action in it, quite a bit, but it's flying. You don't see Maverick running around shooting people. and there's no like martial arts.
Which is funny. When the original Top Gun came out, he'd never done a movie.
Yeah, but now he does it all the time.
Or running or doing anything like that.
They did work in some running though. And it's clearly like, okay, this was so he could run. It is character driven, and it's much more like, because they haven't revealed what the premise of it yet is in any of the trailers, because there's this very specific premise, and it's a great premise. And the relationship with him and Goose's son is very interesting, and I like the dynamic. They're making the dynamic look between them different than it actually is in the movie. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's good. I mean,
which is what I really like, because like, I don't know how much I can say about it, but there's
Chris, nobody watches this show. Nobody is tracking this show. This let me make this clear. We do this show because we love to do it, and it's an opportunity for us to share the things that we learn.
I'm not gonna spoil it, but the thing that I liked about it, and I won't go any further than this, is that Goose's son doesn't blame Maverick for his father's death. I find the trailers make it look like that.
They do make it look like that.
But that's not what it is. Right. There's another reason that they have some kind of bad blood, but it has nothing to do with that, because it was an accident. And I like that they didn't do that.
Because he fucked Meg Ryan.
You'll see. It's nothing like that. It's nothing. It's very much Maverick. Maverick is, an upstanding guy, right? But it's essentially a father-son story between Maverick and this kid who would be like his son. If you saw the first one, it would be his son, basically. And that's what that dynamic is. It's a father and son story, which is what really works.
So I don't know, maybe you can say, maybe not. Does Val Kilmer make an actual appearance, or is it just a photo? No,
Val Kilmer's in it.
Okay. And they redo his voice, or did they shoot it before he lost his voice? Because I know the movie was shot like 2 years ago.
It all makes sense when you see it.
Okay. All right. Don't spoil it.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it. So the reactions that I saw.
It was shot, I'll say this, it was shot after.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reactions that I saw said that the crowd at CinemaCon, and to give listeners context here, it's literally just exhibitors, studio execs, and studio people and press. That's it. Which is kind of a tough crowd, really, when you think about it.
Not really.
I heard that there was cheering.
Not really. They go crazy for everything. That's why
I heard that there was crazy. There was multiple times that people broke out into applause during Top Gun Maverick.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
People were crying.
There was I didn't see anybody crying. There was at Ghostbusters Afterlife too, though. And I heard that Clifford the Big Red Dog, everybody got excited. I saw the Black Phone the same time, and people were just as excited. Well, not just as excited. There weren't as many people, but like, I don't think that, it's a crowd that was pumped up to love the movie. I did love the movie, but I do think I don't think it's necessarily Oscar worthy. I don't think the first Top Gun was either. I think it's very much in the vein of the first Top Gun, which is great. And it's a movie that I think, you and I will both love, know, and I had one major issue with it that I'll get into after the embargo is broken.
Cool. Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll do an episode where we can talk more after we've seen it. And, this coming weekend, we'll do something for Doctor Strange, because I'll see it on Thursday. So we can record this weekend and talk about it.
I also really liked The Black Phone, though. I got to see that. That was a really good horror movie.
Now, let me ask you this. Was it more horror, or was it more like a thriller? Because I heard a lot of people saying that it felt more like a thriller than a horror movie. Like, it wasn't.
To me, it was a thriller. To Laura, it was a horror movie. To me, it was a thriller.
Okay, so it depends on your degree.
I was not afraid, but I thought the premise was cool. My only thing about The Black Phone, though, and my only big complaint about the movie is that Ethan Hawke's a serial killer that's killed 5 kids in this neighborhood so far, right? But you still see the kids riding their bikes after dark. It seems like there's 2 cops on the case. If that happened, first of all, there'd be neighborhood patrols of parents, like in the 70s, vigilante style with fucking guns. Yeah. The FBI would be there. Probably the National Guard would be there too. And cops would be all over it. If you look at what happened in Atlanta during the Atlanta child murders, and this is a small town that's easy to control. It would have been crawling with cops. The National Guard would have been there. And parents in the 70s, especially in a town like that, would have all been patrolling the streets with guns.
Well, and the other thing too is
they could have done. I think one of the best explanations of that ever was in Halloween Kills, where they're like vigilantes and they kill this guy that they think is him. I think that's what would have happened. I think people would be hysterical and they'd be looking for. There's no way, because they were making it look like it's 5 kids got killed, and like everybody's like, oh, unlucky.
Well,
I guess.
The other thing too is Ethan Hawke is like this weirdo driving around in a van, and it's a small town. You telling me the cops would not have picked up on this guy driving around? They would be stopping everybody driving around.
He would have gotten caught. He really would have. But if you can let that go, though, it's a really fun movie, and the kids are very good in it, and it's hard R. Like it's a tougher. It's like Stand By Me meets a thriller genre, or it's kind of like in the vein of It Part 1, where it's like the kids swear and stuff like that, and they use the
swear.
Yeah,
I can't believe.
It's good. And they talk like kids did back in the 70s and 80s too, not like woke kids.
Good. So the Ghostbusters Afterlife sequel. Caught me by surprise.
No scoop on that at all, though. They just said that it was going to be another one happening.
Okay, so they didn't give any specifics on who would be back or anything.
Nothing.
I mean, to me, I'm just like that's honestly surprising CinemaCon news, because like Ghostbusters Afterlife was fine. It wasn't
great. Money though. During a pandemic, made quite a bit of money.
I guess did it? I don't know.
The one that everybody was kind of talking about too is Bad Bunny as El Muerto, but I think it's going to be cheap.
Like, who wants that though? Who
got a couple.
I mean, who wants Craven the Hunter? Who wants?
We got a couple quick glimpses of Craven, and I found it hard to tell it apart from Bullet Train footage because Aaron Taylor Johnson's got the same hair. The Bullet Train footage we saw the first 15 minutes was really cool though.
I'm looking forward to that. Did it feel?
It's very much Guy Ritchie-ish though. Like
that. I heard a lot of people say that, and that actually makes me happy.
But one of the things that's cool about it though is that it's almost like a Jackie Chan movie, but instead of Jackie Chan, it's Brad Pitt. Because he's got
that's what David Leitch has said, is that he wanted it to feel like a Jackie Chan movie.
Because he's got that same kind of character, like he's the low-key guy, doesn't want to fight. He's not an assassin. He doesn't want to fight. Okay. And then he doesn't use guns. And he at the beginning of the movie, they offer him a gun. He leaves it behind. He's like an investigator, and he doesn't like to kill. And you see like a flashback of him investigating somebody, and the guy jumps from a roof, and he actually takes the guy to the hospital because he wants him to survive. Like he doesn't like to kill. So and the trailer is, and so it's basically him. People are attacking him, and he's fighting them off with like props and stuff like that. And whatever he finds near him, and it looks like
he's a trained fighter, I guess. Like at least he knows how to fight.
Yes, and his fighting is amazing. Yeah,
nice. I'm looking forward to it.
But he's like a Jackie Chan-esque character, though.
I feel, after Ambulance, it makes me a little nervous about the action genre. Like
Ambulance is because of Ambulance and because the Northman isn't doing really well. It's like I get nervous about that too. If Top Gun Maverick and Bullet Train flop, I think the action genre on a big screen is in serious jeopardy.
Yeah, same. Like, I mean, because here's the thing, I enjoyed Ambulance. I thought a lot of it was fucking ridiculous, but it was like, it's very much a big screen action movie experience. And it's like, if people aren't turning out for that anymore, if that was released in fucking 1993, like people would have flocked to the theater to see it.
The thing is though, I will say this, Top Gun Maverick and Bullet Train, and what I could see of Bullet Train is much more of the kind of action movie that does well.
Because it's big, it's got a lot of characters.
There's a weirdness about Ambulance and an aggressiveness that those movies don't have, particularly Top Gun Maverick. Like Top Gun Maverick will be one because it is like a crowd pleaser, and it even has a Lady Gaga song, and it's
she did specifically for it,
And it's one of those things like if that movie doesn't do well, like oh fuck, because especially with people liking it as much as they did, like it'd be difficult if that movie's not a hit. Like they'll be because it should be.
Yeah, it's very odd. And you mentioned the Northman, which I saw with my son, and we both enjoyed it
twice.
I don't think I loved it as much as you did, but I did really enjoy it. I thought it was really cool. I thought it had a great start, and I thought it had a great finish. It kind of the middle part, there was some just kind of like sagged a little bit for me. And but overall, I thought it was a great, like to me, whatever problems I may have had with it, it's still a very unique cinema experience, you know, like
it is doing better though than people are giving it credit for though. I think during
dude,
COVID
the theater that I saw it in Alaska was like sold out.
Yeah,
So,
and it's not like it's not open on a ton of screens, and it's had a good hold. I think that it was never going to be a huge movie. I think considering what it is, you know, I think that and then Everything Everywhere All at Once, those two movies are very specific kinds of movies, and I think they're both doing very well for the kinds of movies
for their
that they
niche. Yeah.
Everything Everywhere All at Once is really good too. I
haven't seen that yet.
Finally saw it. It was great, and it's very much like well, that one, like, it's hard to describe because it really, like, it kind of pays homage to the roles that Michelle Yeoh did in like the 80s in Hong Kong, you know, but the person that really steals it is yes, big time, because he's a really likable character, and I think that role was written for Jackie Chan. I think it was supposed to be Michelle Yeoh and Jackie Chan, and for whatever reason, Chan couldn't do it. I think probably because he wouldn't be allowed in China to do it, because they're very because it's very pro LGBTQ rights. It's critical of life in China, and it's very much like not a, you know, I think that Michelle Yeoh is somebody who's not afraid to speak out about that kind of thing.
What are they going to do to Michelle Yeoh at this?
It's all, I noticed that every Chinese person, they're all American citizens, right? Same with James Hong, you know, and it's
who's getting his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame now.
There's a part in the movie though where James Hong just says, "What the fuck?" where everybody started cheering. It's like he's very good in the movie too. He's actually awesome in it. But I think that like Jonathan Kui-Kan, I think he could potentially be nominated for an Oscar for that movie,
really? And
perhaps Michelle Yeoh as well, because it kind of checks all the boxes. There's a lot of good action, and it works in a lot of ways. It's funny, but he's like he could potentially be. Like, I feel like it's going to be a major comeback role for him.
I hope so. I mean, everybody.
And you needed somebody like him too, because he has this gift kind of where, because he's got to play multiple versions of the character. And one version of the character is kind of this really soft, meek guy. And then another is like a badass, right? Yeah. And he needs to be able to, and he can really do that because he's a really good martial artist. And he can do that stuff really well. But then he can also play like this really meek guy who you believe has never thrown a punch in his life. Yeah. You know, and the thing is, Michelle Yeoh can do that as well. And she does in the film, you know?
Michelle Yeoh, she's just amazing. Like, she really is.
And
like, as an actress and as a performer, somebody that like can do the physical stuff, she's a marvel.
It's a great role for her because she gets to play so many different kinds of roles. But yeah, I mean, and they needed, and the thing about her also is that her English is very good, and they needed somebody that was able to do that, you know, that was able to evoke that, you know, so because she's supposed to have been here for a long time, and you need it, but also have an accent, you know, kind of, it's like, it's a, you know, and I really, really liked it. I thought it was great.
Nice. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I think it's going to VOD this week, maybe.
And it's edgy. It's too bad because it's a great theater movie, but
I'd like to go see it in the theater. I just don't know if I'll make it. That's just, and who knows if it'll still be there this week. Like, that's the shit part about this whole changing model of theatrical releases.
Yeah. Well, I noticed Ambulance is already out, and I think The Northman is coming soon. So,
Jesus.
It's weird. Eh? It's kind of weird. Yeah, I opened up my VOD the other day, and it's like the fucking Ambulance is there, and it's like,
what the fuck?
Yeah,
I mean, what are you gonna do? Like, you know, you have to think about it in terms of, okay, if a movie flops at the box office now, what does
they put it out right away?
What does a 6-week window do? There's no anticipation.
I find it crazy that the Batman is streaming, considering how much money it made. Like, already,
and it's still making money in theaters,
and it's been streaming for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I watched it once. I probably won't. To be honest, I probably won't watch it again. I found the issues that I had with the Batman were exactly the issues I had watching it at home, where I was like, I just want to fast forward to this part. Like, this is just boring. Like, didn't really do it. There's a lot of
score,
like,
though.
It's fucking score is amazing, but there's just a lot of like really just lull. Like, okay, this is like this part has lost its luster after the first screening, and it's I can move forward from this. And I felt like, I still think the Batman is a little bit anticlimactic. The final battle, I don't feel is like really all that great. But it is what it is. I think the Batman 2 will more than likely up the ante. It's kind of the traditional way of things. I hope that it does. And I hope that they bring in the Joker and just lean into that. That's what everybody wants to see. I don't understand why they wouldn't just do it.
I saw a couple of interesting documentaries through the last few weeks. I watched, Laura and I have been watching Meltdown, the 3 Mile Island documentary. It's coming on Netflix. And then that led to, because 3 Mile Island happened 12 days after the release of the China Syndrome. And that led to us watching the China Syndrome. And it was like the thing when they made the China Syndrome, everybody was like, the nuclear industry was like, that could never happen. And then 12 days after it opened, the fucking identical thing happened. Right. And it was like, just like the movie predicted. And it was weird watching that. But there's some really funny footage though of them talking about, like, because the China Syndrome is not a real term. Like for a meltdown, it's called a nuclear meltdown. It's not called the China Syndrome. Right. And then you see they're giving a press conference, and then like the journalists are asking very seriously, it's like, but how close were we to the China Syndrome being activated? And then the guys are like, it's not a real thing. There's no such thing as the China Syndrome. You tell it's the bane of every nuclear physicist's existence. Right? It's like, it's not a real thing, people. But the movie had enough information in it that everybody walked out of it and thought they knew a little bit about nuclear fission.
We're experts now.
Because it is like a pretty well done movie and it's intelligent. And the thing is, they probably had a whistleblower or somebody on the inside giving them information.
Right.
But it was interesting because actually Jimmy Carter was a nuclear physicist, so he knew more about what was going on than anybody did, and he was the president at the time. It was cool to watch. And I saw the John Wayne Gacy miniseries, which was really
I know a lot about that as it is. I read a couple books actually about that. I read a book called
Berlinger directed it.
Say what?
Joe Berlinger, who did
Joe Berlinger, Paradise I read Lost. A book called The Last Victim, which I think they even made into a movie. I don't know if you ever heard of it. The guy that wrote it,
where Brian Dennehy played him too realistically.
Yeah, the guy that wrote it killed himself years later, and he started a communication relationship with John Wayne Gacy while he was in prison, and ended up going and visiting him and getting more information. And there was a scenario where they had set it up where the guards and everything had set it up so that John Wayne Gacy was going to kill this kid and rape him and do all this fucked up shit. Ended up not happening because he kind of got wind of it and got a feel for it. But it was just a haunting book because it was a portrait of John Wayne Gacy after he's been caught. He's already, put out his.
The thing is, they interview him and he has no remorse at all.
No remorse, none.
He's like, fuck him. They had it coming, and it was just like, they were garbage. I could do what I want. And the thing is, they actually interview a couple of men that he raped before this happened, and there were survivors. And they at the time, they never said anything because it was, a man couldn't say that he was raped by another man back then. It was frowned upon. And these guys are crying in the interviews, and they're all 60-year-old men at this point, and macho guys. And it's very difficult for them to admit to that they were raped. And he actually went to jail for that, for rape. And he got out in a year. And then that was what allowed him to go and move on. And it's fucked up.
There's so many serial killers that have gotten caught before things got really, really bad. And then they were released and they just literally just moved to a new location and just restarted and became the monsters they became.
A couple of the cops they interviewed too said point blank that the fact is he was seen as a guy that was killing mostly homosexuals, and they didn't care. A lot of them didn't care. A lot of them did care, but a lot of them didn't care. And there was a guy that escaped from him. That was a gay prostitute, was a hustler. He told them about it. They ignored him completely. And he actually tried to catch him. He was staking him out and stuff like that, and gave them the information that led to Gacy being caught. But they just didn't give a fuck. And it's crazy to hear that.
Yeah.
What else though? There was another one that I watched too that was really good. I watched The Hunt for the Crypto King, which is a fucked up story.
I haven't heard of that one.
It was about this guy who's a Canadian guy who started this cryptocurrency exchange, hundreds of millions of dollars in Bitcoin. He dies mysteriously of Crohn's, which is very hard to die from. Canadian guy disappears. Nobody ever saw the body. and he dies with the passwords, and nobody can access the money.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
on Netflix. Yeah, it's pretty nuts, and he's probably still alive out there. It's a nutty documentary.
Wow.
And then one that I heard about, but I haven't seen yet because it hasn't come to Canada, but you guys have it, is Captive Audience, which is based on, do you remember Steven Stayner? Did you ever hear that story?
I don't know. I don't think so.
So Steven Stayner was
Sounds familiar though.
Steven Stayner was the milk carton kid. And basically what happened was he was kidnapped when he was very young. And then about 10 years later, he reemerged because he escaped his captor when his captor got another child, and he took the kid out and he rescued the kid, and they escaped, and he went back to his family when he was like 17 years old. And he had been a captive for like 10 years. And his name was Steven, and he had gone by some other name. And then they made a miniseries about it when I was a kid called I Know My Name is Steven. And he had escaped with this kid that he saved, basically.
Oh, wow.
And he went back to his family and had a very hard time adjusting and died tragically young in his 20s. Years later, his little brother was revealed to be a serial killer. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's what the documentary is about. It's on Hulu. I haven't seen it yet because we haven't gotten it here yet, but we're supposed to get it soon. Yeah. Years later, it's revealed to have been a very prolific serial killer.
Jesus Christ.
I know. Isn't that messed up? That's the thing, though. It's always, true life is always more fucked up than reality.
Yep.
Reality is always more fucked up than fiction. That's
Truth is stranger than fiction.
Because if you were to write certain things as fiction, they would think that you were full of shit.
Yeah, it's so true, man. Like, that's the thing too. People have, there's people where, I've seen it before. It's an argument I've had with people where they see people get shot in movies and they're like, oh, he'd be dead. And I'm like,
yeah, you don't know that.
Go back, go read some accounts of people, especially like, war heroes that have been given the Purple Heart or the Congressional Medal of Honor that have been shot like 22 times.
I remember reading about a guy, a victim of a mob hit. He was shot in the back of the head and he was fine. He was like, hey, what the fuck's your problem? And it was
shoot me in the head.
Like something like 20% of his brain was blown out, but it wasn't a 20% that he would have ever missed. So it was okay. Like
it's crazy. Like the human body, as vulnerable as it is, as Jamie Lannister said, we're just buckets of meat. But there's so much more resilience to it too. Like there's people that get stabbed like 25 times, and they're like they survive. It's like I'm fine. It hurt. Yeah, I was in the hospital, but I lived. Like I wasn't doing yoga the next day and I wasn't visiting the Grand Canyon, but I still survived. So I feel like we kind of get taught by movies sometimes and things that we see, and we can't accept anything anymore. It's like, oh no, that's bullshit. It's like, well, is it?
Well, that's Steven Stayner shit. If you had said that, this guy who got kidnapped, what are the chances that his little brother would become a serial killer? You wouldn't think, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's like has anything to do with him being kidnapped, like if that affected his childhood. And I would imagine if you're a kid.
I'm sure it did. But his brother's gone and he's being molested for a decade, by some psychos. I mean, that fucks with you too. And I'm sure that the family situation, it was probably very hard. And apparently the father was a very difficult man, wouldn't let Steven go to a psychologist when he came back. He was like, nah, just move on. And it's like he's been a captive for 10 years. Like the guy needed a lot of help and he never got it. Yeah, it is.
Jeez. I don't know if I'm going to watch that, Chris. I
want to see it. I think it sounds really interesting.
Fuck, that is crazy though.
Yeah.
That is fucking wild. So I've watched a couple things. There's a couple things that are out that have been coming out. The other day I watched the first 2 episodes of The Offer, which is the show about the making of The Godfather. Now you had said earlier before we started recording that you had heard people saying it wasn't very good.
I heard it wasn't good, but only because the thing about The Godfather is that story is very familiar to anybody that's read, Robert Evans's biography, Francis Ford Coppola's biography, and now this is Albert Ruddy's version. And it's just like, I feel like I know that story so well about what was happening. But I suppose that there are a lot of people that don't.
Like I'm not a bona fide expert on it or anything. Like I've
heard it many times. I've heard the story told many times, and I don't think what happened was that extraordinary. I think the result was extraordinary, but I don't think the circumstances were that extraordinary.
Well, I mean, they definitely play up the drama, especially the mob drama with Mickey Cohen. And then,
I mean, the thing is, the irony is that the mobsters fucking loved it when it came out.
Yeah, but they were so vehemently against it to begin with. But it ended up becoming like almost like a way that defined them and has continued to define them. Same with The Sopranos. You could say that The Sopranos portrays the mafia in a negative light, and yet people love it.
And they revel in it too. Of course.
They embrace it, and I think like the mob themselves.
Well, Goodfellas as well. Goodfellas.
Yeah. All these movies that are like showing the ugly side of the mob.
I don't think that The Godfather necessarily even shows the ugly side. I mean, they do in 2, I think they do, but in the like there is a glamour to it in those movies, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a very noble. Like Don Corleone and Michael in the first movie are very noble characters. In the second movie, they start to peel back the layers of Michael Corleone in a way that's very interesting. And they talk about that in the movie. Yeah.
Like there's a scene where Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo are talking to each other, and they're talking about Michael's transformation of how he goes from being somebody of hope to embracing the Corleone family. And basically in that one moment when he kills the two guys at the meeting, they talk like very much about the scene, and Coppola's like, he holds the gun, and it's like the moment that he drops the gun after he kills them is when he's like fully embraced becoming a Corleone. And so they go in depth about the scenes of the movie, how they created the scenes.
And the funny thing is that the book by Puzo isn't very good. Like the movie is significantly better than the book. The book has,
and it shows them working together to write it. It shows Coppola and Puzo really collaborating to make it what it became, because
the book is like an airport read. Like I read part of it, and it is like it's very much an airport read of its time, whereas the movie is a classic.
Yeah. And you see that too. You see where at least they show. Puzo like basically wrote it because he grew up around mobsters and stuff. So he's like, I'll just write a mobster book, because his previous book didn't sell for shit. There's like, his wife's like, just write something that And he's like, all right, I'll write this fucking mafia book. Like he didn't want to, but he was like, I'll just write it. But then it was Coppola that really that connected it, and he's the one that kind of like said, this is what it's about. This is, it's about family. It's not really a mafia story. It's about family. It's about immigrants and all that other stuff. So
I find that Dan Fogler is good as Coppola.
Yeah.
And I like
everybody's good.
Yeah. I heard that they say that Matthew Good steals it as
Matthew Good as Evans is amazing. Yeah. Like he steals every scene he's in.
Teller is very good in Top Gun Maverick.
Good. I mean, he's good as Ruddy, but he's also like, since he's the protagonist, he's kind of the straight man in that way, like he's kind of like the heroic person, I guess, if you wanted to put it that way. But ultimately, he's good, but I feel like, Good and everybody else kind of outshines him. And it's weird to think that what's his nuts was going to play him.
Armie
Hammer. Like, such a very different look and dynamic in terms of those two actors. So it's very, I think Teller is a much better choice, because when I think about if it were Hammer, I don't think it would be anywhere near I don't think you would feel for his character as much. You wouldn't necessarily want him to win. Yeah. And i.e. winning is getting the movie made. But anyways, the offer is pretty good. I really like it. I'm going to continue to watch it and finish it. I also finished Tokyo Vice this past week, which, for those that have watched it, know that, without spoiling anything, it does obviously end on a major cliffhanger. So
I'm curious as to whether or not they'll bring it back.
Yeah. Like I'm like, dude, you can't, like, they definitely did not shoot season 1 of Tokyo Vice with being a one and done by any stretch. So it would really suck.
I feel like they're not going to bring it back.
You shut your fucking mouth. How dare you? It would be a shame, because I loved it. I loved it. And I think even if it doesn't get renewed, there's some actors in that really are being underutilized, or at least have like shown some serious weight. The one standout is Sho Kasamatsu, who plays Sato in the show. He's like the young Yakuza member that's just starting out. And he has the biggest arc of any character in the series. And I hope we see more of him. I think I'm genuinely impressed by his performance, his presence, everything. Like he is definitely primed for more work. And there's quite a few younger actors that are in this, and then older actors. Shun Sugata, who plays Ishida in the show, is great. He plays Ishida is one of the other Yakuza bosses, and he's just got that presence, man. Like it would be a shame if we aren't able to see more of that in Tokyo Vice season 2, or just see him get more work. I mean, he's an old man, but fuck, he's great. Like what Tokyo Vice revealed to me is like, there's some seriously untapped, massive star power out there in the Asian community and the Asian community that really is being underutilized. And that's one of the things I love about Tokyo Vice is that it is such a great platform for these actors to really shine. And they're just great. Jin Miyamoto is also great. And a lot of these guys, they've been really big in Japan, but they haven't. This is kind of their first experience in a U.S. project and an American-made project, and they're fucking great. So whether Tokyo Vice comes back or not, I hope that these actors, I hope that it serves as a launching pad for a lot of them, because some terrific performances. And Rachel Keller's really good too in it. So just a lot of great performances overall. And I hope that I'll be very sad if we don't get Tokyo Vice. Yeah. I will cry. I'll curl up in a ball and I'll cry on the floor, and that's gonna be that.
I'm waiting to hear if it gets brought back for a season 2 before I watch season 1, because I don't want to invest in it and then get crushed.
So that's a great point, and that's something that I wanted to.
That happens to me. I do that a lot with shows, to be honest.
So we need to talk about this because I think this is interesting. So Netflix took a massive dive. They lost their stock value, dropped by half.
I can see why, to be honest. Like I was thinking about it. Yeah.
Dude, I dumped my shares. I was like, I lost a lot of money off this Netflix thing. And I was like, I'm not holding on to them because I don't really have the same faith that I had before with the streaming competition coming out there.
The problem with Netflix, and I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but they've gotten so niche with their programming that they seem to be kind of ignoring. They haven't chased that big mainstream success that I think they need in a certain way. I think they've been focused on, like, they put a lot of money into also like really disposable entertainment. I think that Red Notice and The Atom Project and stuff like that are movies that I think did well originally, but I don't think are going to have any staying power. I don't think people are going to go back and watch them. And I don't think they're going to be able to necessarily turn that into franchises. I was talking about this with Rusty. And I think what Netflix needs to do is they need to buy some IP. If you're going to invest the money, like they made a mistake not buying MGM, because they could have gotten. And I think that Prime is going to end up really coming out ahead because of buying that. Yeah. It feels like Netflix needs to buy like Lionsgate or something like that, or they need to buy a studio because they need that good IP, because they have nothing. They have no franchises now.
Well, even if they're going to create new IP, look at what is Prime Video has fucking Lord of the Rings, HBO Max has fucking Game of Thrones. And Netflix has Stranger Things, but like
Netflix has really has fucked themselves though, because they canceled too many shows too early. And they cancel them too quickly. So
that's what I was getting into, where you mentioned Tokyo Vice not wanting to watch season 1 if they're not going to do a season 2.
That's what happened. That's what happened to me.
Problem with Netflix.
That's what happened to me with Cowboy Bebop. 2 weeks after it came out, they announced that it was canceled. Who's going to go watch the first season now?
It's just going to sit there.
And then 2 of their best shows, they didn't let them have a proper ending. So Glow and Mindhunter. They didn't let them. They just kind of dropped them. And those were shows that people liked. And it's like, maybe that's a niche you need to play to. But then they also have all this content that's like ultra woke that nobody watches, and they cancel like that, and then they spend all the money.
Who's asking for woke content to begin with?
The problem is that you built it for a certain audience that's never going to like it, because it's not going to check all the boxes that they want to check it. And it's like, because when you cater to that audience, you're catering to an audience that will always find fault in everything that you do.
And it's also such a small audience.
Like, it is
why would you put so much money into a group of people that cannot be placated in any way, because they actively are always looking for something wrong?
I think you can do stuff. You can definitely do stuff with underrepresented groups, but you can do it in a way
absolutely. But that's not woke. That's just expanding your content.
I mean, I think Tokyo Vice is a good example of that. And I think that I saw a preview for a movie at CinemaCon that looked like a great example of it called Bros with Billy Eichner. And it's the first like gay rom-com, and it's like produced by Judd Apatow. And it's like, it's hilarious. The trailer was really funny. It's like they're gay, but it's still like the same thing. It's the same shit. It's like, I want to find somebody that I don't hate to spend the rest of my life with. Yeah. You know, they celebrate the difference, you know, like in the trailer, the guy's like, I gotta get my asshole clean. He's like, oh, cool. And, you know, and it's like this thing, you know, about like, you know, but it's fun the way they talk about it though, too. And it's like, everybody's having a good time with it, you know, and it's like, they're celebrating the differences, but at the end of the day, you know, it's like, it is a relatable story. So you can watch it, you know, beyond just, you know, just a very niche audience. Similar to, I think that, you know, I think like the gay showrunners and stuff have done a good job kind of making things universal. Like it's a sin too, you know, about the AIDS crisis, but it's also like about dying young, about, you know, not getting to live life to your full potential. You know, and I think that that's a model that people need to follow a little bit more. But then when you make something, it's like, I got to check this box. I got to check this box. I got to check this box. I got to check that box. Yeah, check that box. And it gets laughed off the screen, and nobody, and a lot of it, you don't even know it came out, you know, because it gets so unceremoniously dumped.
Yeah. And in the end, I think making content for a group of people that is just so minuscule, that are basically loud on Twitter, that is going to backfire tremendously. And it's going to continue to backfire. Like, that's just make content that people want to see. Don't make content that won't offend people.
The next show that's going to get canceled before it even gets a chance is they're doing that Resident Evil show, but it's like the all woke, all female cast, down with the patriarchy. It's like, who watches Resident Evil though? Like, why? So nobody's going to like, what is it like? Is there a huge female fan base for Resident Evil that's going to be big enough to sustain, you know, I mean, there's no problem.
That's a good point. It's like,
you can have a female protagonist too, but like, don't say, you know,
the Resident Evil franchise is known for having a female protagonist.
But then the show I haven't seen the show, but it's like, it's just one of those shows that all men are terrible. Watch this show, please. Like, it's just kind of, you know, I don't know.
Do they not realize that like men represent 50% of the population in this entire planet? Like,
and a big chunk larger than that with like gamers and stuff like that.
Who the fuck do you think is playing Resident Evil? You know, sure, there's women that play Resident Evil. Absolutely. But I guarantee you, if you broke it down into a percentage, it's definitely 100% more males than females that are playing these games. And nobody wants to watch it for the woke shit. They just want to watch people kill fucking zombies and monsters. Yeah. Like, this is where I think a lot of creatives, and this is a huge problem. You're seeing it with Disney right now. Disney's starting to get into that not starting, they're fucking jumping into it, where they're trying to placate everybody and take a stance on one thing or another. It's like, you're supposed to be making entertainment. Nobody gives a fuck what you think, Disney. Let people decide what they think. We don't need you to decide for us. We don't need you to make content that decides for us. We don't need you to gear your content or make content to spite another group of people. Just make good content.
I find that Disney is cowardly about certain things, though, because the thing about Disney is they always virtue signal. You know, like they'll have a big thing where we cast the trans actress in Willow. How big is the role? I guarantee you the role is minuscule at best. And it's something that they're going to cut out in other territories, which is terrible, you know, and you always get that in these movies where it's like, there's a gay character, but it's such a brief fleeting moment that you can tell it's been done in a way that they're going to cut it out of different versions. And it's like,
well, it's like with Doctor Strange, with the America Chavez, they're cutting it out. Just the mention that she's gay.
I know. Yeah. And it's like, you want to do something brave, like do a fucking movie like Bros.
So, I mean, but that's the thing is like, you have all these people that have like misconstrued this bill from Florida and like turned it into this whole thing. And you can have your stance on it one way or another. But the bottom line is like, Disney is like trying to like make this big stance and everything on it. But then you have situations like this, like, oh, so you stand for this, but here you are cutting out characters when it comes down to money in another territory. Kiss my fucking ass.
Well, and it was interesting too this year at CinemaCon too, because it used to be in CinemaCon's past, it was celebrating China, and now China is a bad guy. So there's not really that much of it anymore. But it's like, don't take a stance against China though when you were like on your knees to China up until the time they stop going to your movies and stop giving you money. Like it's all bullshit, you know. It's all bullshit. And they never address the money is always the bottom line. And even the woke stuff that they're doing, they're not doing it to make social change. They're doing it to make money because they think there's an audience that's going to pay for this shit, and there's not.
That's the thing. That's the thing is they've all been fooled into thinking that these loud voices on Twitter represent a majority when they absolutely do not. You go on the street, you talk to your friends, you talk to the people that you know. Nobody is clamoring for this. Nobody. I think people are starting to see through it, though. Like I was reading on Twitter. Some person was putting all these faux academic words in, and they were saying like Wes Anderson is fascist. And then somebody wrote back like, what the fuck? That somehow the French Dispatch was this conservative fascist allegory. And then people are like, you're a fucking moron to this person. and it was the same thing. They're like, oh, the Northman is an ode to the right. And it's like fucking Robert Eggers. I interviewed him twice. He is such a left-wing. He is a left-wing guy. Come on. I mean, yeah, it's such bullshit. And and people think they know something and because they want to sound smart and you don't fucking know. Like it's not. You're making a Viking movie. Sorry, it's not like there's not. He's making a realistic Viking movie. I'll be honest. I don't think that the Northman went far enough to show how rough and difficult and crazy. They did a good job. Eggers did a good job, like showing the Viking funeral where they kill the virgin. You know what I'm saying? And then there's the come and see. In reality, they rape the virgin before they stab her and burn her. Well, and then there was that come and see moment too. That was pretty and as soon as I saw that scene, I was like, oh my God, which is based on an actual atrocity that happened in World War II. That really did happen. Or actually, it wasn't even. I don't even think it was World War II. I mentioned Come and See to Robert Eggers, and he was like, "Whoa!" He goes, "I don't think I made a movie as good as Come and See." And he goes, "I don't think I'm capable of making a movie as good as Come and See." But he said, "I appreciate it," and he did nod. Like that was kind of a nod to that moment. Yeah. But he said he was more inspired by Conan the Barbarian. Yeah. It was, listen, I think the Northman was great. And I think that you should watch it again. Don't make the mistake. Oh, I'm definitely going to watch it again. Oh my God. I made a big mistake. I took a shitload of edibles, like a ton. And I went to see it. You texted me that. And I was like, as soon as I read that, I was like, there's no way I would fucking get high and watch it. It was a terrifying experience. And the thing is, when Willem Dafoe showed up, and in that scene, I immediately said to myself, "Oh shit, I've taken too much." And then it was, and my friend Joanna had taken as much as I had, and I was there with Laura and her boyfriend, and then Joanna's boyfriend Chris, and we were all watching it, and then Joanna turned to me and her eyes were so red, like she'd been crying the whole movie because I hadn't been sitting next to her. And she goes, "Why did you let me take all these drugs before we watched this movie? Like, this is an upsetting movie. It's not like it's not like this ain't Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, motherfucker." But that said, it did heighten the thing. I'm like, "But did you love the movie?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, it was fucking amazing." And I'm like, "Well, it heightened everything. Like that was the thing." And it is a very thematic movie. So I was watching it. It was like a roller coaster ride. But it was very scary at moments. You know? I'll bet I would not want to be high watching that fucking movie. I would just don't get high and watch Robert Eggers movies. You know, like just don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do like Bumbray did. It was a nightmarish descent into hell. Madness. I imagine I'm going to watch The Lighthouse next on that, like messed up all that. Thing is, I don't mind that though. That I don't mind being scared and fucked up. It's funny. I interviewed David Cronenberg at CinemaCon. Because we saw a tiny bit of footage, well, just the trailer for Crimes of the Future. New one, yeah. And I interviewed him, and when I talked to him, I said, "Yeah, so I was a kid, and I saw Videodrome when I was really young, and my brain has never been quite the same." And he goes, "Oh no," he goes, "Well, is that like, did I like abuse you as a child? It's like child abuse." And I'm like, "I'm sorry." I'm like, no, it was great. I like that. Dude, my dad took us to see The Fly at the movies. And The Fly is less disturbing than Videodrome though, because The Fly is a very specific mistake that the guy makes, right? Yeah, but the outcome is so horrific. Oh, it is horrific. So well done, but it's just so horrific. And that's the most interesting thing, though. And if you read Brooks's biography, he talks about that. So, because
he said that he was told by the guy who was helping him run Brooks film, you should remake The Fly. And he's like, oh, that movie's stupid. And then he goes and he watched it, goes, I see what's here. And it's like, so in the movie, it's just a big fly head and then that's it. And he goes, what if you did that really slowly and horrifically? He keeps adding a little more sugar to his coffee, you know, and then he was, and then he says, whoa, he goes, he really, sold it. And then he says, he goes, and then I was like, who should do this movie? And then there was like, oh, you should watch this movie, Videodrome. And I watched it. It was outstanding. And I was like, wow, this guy's crazy. Perfect for our movie.
He's crazy. Dude, The Fly is fucked up. I can't wait to show The Fly to my kid to fuck him up for life.
Yeah, and he said, I was very proud. He said he was the most proud of a movie. He said when he saw The Fly, he said he was extremely proud. And he came up with the catchphrase, the tagline, be afraid, be very afraid. That was him. Because he said that it's a line in the movie when she finds that when he's trying to put the girl in and she goes, I'm scared. He goes, don't be afraid. And she goes, no. Gina Davis says, no, be afraid, be very afraid. He said that scene stuck with him so much when he watched it. And he said, that's a great tagline.
It's a great scene in general too.
And he said he thought that tagline, he said he wanted it on every fucking poster and just show the pod. And that's all you need to show. Be afraid, be very afraid.
I love The Fly too as well. I mean, I love it.
I do too, but it's
probably
very
love
upsetting.
it as much as The Fly. I do. I love it.
I really like it too, but it's very upsetting, especially if you're a dog.
The gore in The Fly 2 is some of the most horrific gore, and you can't find The Fly 2 anywhere. You can't buy it on iTunes. You can't stream it anywhere.
It's on Disney Plus here in Canada. It's very upsetting because of the dog stuff, and that's why I haven't shown it to Laura because I know it'll really upset her.
The dog stuff is awful, but then everything
the other stuff won't bother her. I mean, my favorite scene in that is when the guy gets his head crushed by the elevator.
Oh yeah,
that was fucking amazing. I remember watching.
My favorite part is when he sprays the venom shit in the dude's face, and he's like, oh, and he just basically pulls his whole face off, and his eyeballs pop out and everything. As a kid watching that movie, I was like, both completely horrifically fucking challenged, and at the same time, just so fucking entertained.
When I was watching The Fly 2 as a kid, me and my friend, we kept repeating that scene with the elevator over and over and over again because we thought it was the craziest shit we'd ever seen. And it actually has a happy ending, which is cool, you know, because it's like
I've always wanted to see. They did a comic book sequel, which is not very good. But my thing was, so Brundle, I have to only call
he would have elements of The Fly still in him.
Right. So he would basically be like a superhero now.
Yeah.
He would have the human and fly elements of this DNA put together and all the muck, you know, given off to the old guy. So he would be like, you could make an awesome Fly 3.
Well, in the movie though, and I always thought that was cool in The Fly 2, because in The Fly 2, he is a superhero basically.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things. It's like, what if the transformation happened, but his mind didn't go? You know, because in that one,
he actually becomes like Spider-Man, really. It's
well, the thing is, he stays a good person, whereas Jeff Goldblum became a monster. He stays like as it's happening, he knows what's happening to him because he saw what's happening, and he's prepared himself, and he stays a good person. He kills people horrifically, but he's also
bad people. Everybody he kills,
they have it coming. Yeah, they have it coming. He doesn't kill it, and then this guy sends the dogs after him. And he won't kill the dogs.
Yeah.
But that's a great movie too, though. Eric Stoltz.
I fucking love The Fly. Anybody that says The Fly 2, oh, it's some cheesy. No, it's good. Fly 2 is actually legitimately great. It's a great movie.
You got to read Brooks's biography though, and he talks all about great stories in it. He talks all about Spaceballs, and he said
I would be interested to hear the Spaceballs.
He said that he was interesting because he said that he always approached the people that he would spoof before, satirize, to get their permission, because he's a movie fan and he wouldn't want to do it unless he got the permission. Right. And he said he started doing that with Hitchcock for High Anxiety, and he said that he became like best friends with Hitchcock. And they went to the premiere together. And then he said that with Lucas, he didn't want to offend him, so he sent him the script, and he said, and Lucas loved it. He said he gave him one condition. He said, you can make this movie, no merchandising, because if you merchandise it, people will think that those are our toys. And he knew that was the most lucrative thing. So he promised not to merchandise it, and he didn't. And
which is funny because it's such a huge part of the movie itself. He's like,
I know, he said he was able to do it, but he said he could have made so much money if he had done that. But he did the post-production for the movie at Lucasfilm. That's how tight he was with George Lucas.
I'll be honest, like as a fucking nerd collector, if they made Spaceballs figures today, I'd fucking buy those things.
He said that he can make stuff now because it's kind of like Lucas is more kind of open about that stuff, but he said he did promise him he wouldn't. But he said that of all of his movies, Spaceballs is the one that's brought him in the most money. He said it wasn't even that big of a hit in theaters, but he said on home video and cable, he said it made a fortune.
I saw it in theaters too. I remember we loved it. Like because
he helped finance a lot of his movies, but then he said he stopped after Solar Babies. But he said that Men in Tights made a lot of money for him too over the years.
That's good. I might check it out. I'm reading the Mad Max Fury Road book next after I finish Tokyo Vice. So maybe I'll stack Mel Brooks in there somewhere.
It's the one biography though where he doesn't say anything bad about anybody in the book. He's very clearly a mensch, very likable, and everybody liked him, and he liked everybody, it seemed.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. Well, I think that about does it for this week. Sorry we've been a little late, but it's just kind of the pattern that we've gotten into because we're both busy individuals, but we do enjoy doing the show and keeping you guys updated. Obviously a big show with CinemaCon with Chris being there. I was definitely jealous that I wasn't, but I ended up writing about panels anyways. And
it was a whirlwind. It really was.
Yeah. I think if anything, I was just more, the one thing I would have loved to have seen the most is Top Gun Maverick, but it'll be out in a few weeks anyway. So not.
The funny thing about that is they started screening it right afterwards too. Apparently,
yeah, I saw that. Like, there's a bunch of screenings happening.
A friend of mine saw it in Montreal the same time that I saw it. So
yeah, they got a junket going on in San Francisco.
Yes. So, I don't think Cruise is doing the junket though.
Yeah, he is.
Really, I heard he was doing red carpet stuff. That was it.
He might be, but that's what he'll be doing. So
yeah,
he won't do sit down. He won't do one-on-ones. He never does.
Yeah, no,
unless they're fucking screen ahead of time.
Super vetted. Yeah.
So anyways, next week, Chris will see Doctor Strange on Tuesday. I'll see it on Thursday. So we'll record probably Friday.
I see it on Monday night, for embargo.
Tomorrow night.
Embargo breaks on Tuesday morning.
Okay.
But I'm not going to have any spoilers in mind, but we'll talk spoilers next weekend.
Yeah, we'll talk spoilers on the show. I mean, shit, they're already trickling out. So we always talk spoilers for something that's just come out. And, for all 50 of you that watch the show, then I'm
very eager to see it because Rockman is probably going to be there tomorrow night. And Rockman, a mutual friend of ours.
It's funny.
His reactions for Spider-Man.
No way.
Like, I thought they were going to have to clean the seat afterwards from his because he was just screaming, oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I love Jason. He's such a
I really hope he's at Doctor Strange tomorrow night because I could just hear him go, oh,
Jason's a great guy. He's so funny. I don't think we can leave it on a better note than that. So thank you guys for joining us. Sorry we didn't get to questions this week. We just wanted to cover all these topics. We'll get back to questions next week. So until then, I hope you guys have a great week. Hope you enjoyed the show. Until then, remember to love what you love. And that's it.